Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Toonami Squad Sessions podcast. I'm your host, Sam, at Samster299, and with me today I have the other Sam
Howdy.
and Logan.
Yo.
Pretty small crowd today, but it's been a hot minute since the last one. You can blame some jackass named Ian who destroyed my town.
God, Ian, what an asshole.
He is an asshole. He knocked out my power for almost 2 weeks, and my computer was still down for another week. But so that explains no podcast. That explains no podcast in the last month, I want to say. So I know a lot of things have happened between now and then, but let's of course ease into ourselves with our starter topic. What are we watching? I'll go first. So lately I've been grinding Bleach because originally I wanted to get caught up before the Thousand-Year Blood War. But then a hurricane came, and I could not do anything for like a good 2 weeks. So by the time I did get my power and my internet back, it was only a day until, no, not a day, but like 2 days until the season premiered. So at this point, I'm just trying to blitz it. And then once I finish the original series, I'll then move into Thousand-Year Blood War. I have been enjoying it, but I've also been skipping the filler. And you know, it's funny because we always joke with Naruto with its bad filler.
Mm-hmm.
And like Bleach has less episodes than Naruto, but the filler really like can just kill. Like, I'm just glad I wasn't there having to watch this at the time, either during its simulcast or its original Toonami Adult Swim run, because God, it's just like this. Like, first off, this arc is just God. How long is this arc, man? Like, I mean, I'm enjoying it partially. There were some moments that was making me fall asleep, like. I don't need to see one of the Soul Reapers fight another Arrancar that's gonna die. Sit through freaking backstory. I literally fall asleep at those episodes. It's when Ichigo's on screen that I actually care. But I think I'm close to the end. He's starting to fight Aizen now. Other than that, because there was a lot of stuff from now till then. I don't know if I brought this up last podcast. I mentioned Ranking of Kings. I saw that. I think I did mention this last podcast. Ranking of Kings, I really enjoyed it. I then had to suffer more of Andre, which I had to watch this show called Yosuga no Sora. I hate it. It involves a word that I will not say because then YouTube will age restrict this video. So that I hated that. Other than that, I've been watching a lot of the current stuff. So lately, my goal. Oh, speaking of current stuff. Yeah, one of the other things that I watched, and Jesus Christ, Cyberpunk Edgerunners. Say what you will about the game. I know the game's hot trash, but that show, my God, like, I literally at the end was like almost in tears. Like, Jesus Christ, I can't believe something that amazing came out from like such a trash game. like God, it's so fucking great. So highly recommend you check out Edge Runners. Um, and I've also just been watching a lot of the current stuff that's been coming out lately. New My Hero's back for a sixth season, so I've just been watching that. The Chainsaw Man, Jesus Christ! Like, the fourth episode came out today, and that's a freaking roller coaster. Uh, and Spy Family came back for its second half, and I enjoy Spy Family. I enjoy Anya. She's cute, she's adorable, and of course I enjoy Yor. I'll leave it at that.
Ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Well, look, it's just like I'm dipping in to say ma'am for your, because Jesus, anyway.
Oh, God, I'm trying to think what else, because there was a lot that happened between now and then. Shit. I will say pretty soon, I am gonna be checking out Blood Blockade Battlefront as soon as I finish Bleach, because I owe Steven. And that's about it from me, I think. Yeah. What about you, Sam?
Well, one of the shows is a topic we'll get into later, so I'll save my thoughts on that. Sorry, I had a cough for today, so I might be coughing a lot during this episode. So, one of the shows that I've been watching is something I'll be airing this Saturday night on Toonami, which is Made in Abyss, the Golden City of the Scorching Sun, I believe, is the full title of it. I love it. It's more Made in Abyss.
Is it wholesome?
Yes. Without spoiling anything, people are in for a very interesting ride. And I do recommend, and actually this is a requirement if you want to watch it, please check out Made in Abyss, Dawn of the Deep Soul. It is not something that you can skip. It is actually required viewing before you actually get into season 2, as the movie follows up from season 1, and then it follows up to the events of what would be this current season. It's a little shame Toonami can't air it. I don't know.
Let's save the main Abyss talk, because we will talk about that later. No offense, but like you can mention that you've been watching it, but like we're gonna be talking about that later anyway.
Okay, that's fine. Then yeah, Made in Abyss. As far as anything else, not too much. I've just been busy with work, so I haven't really had enough time to check out anything else.
All right. Well.
Oh, actually, I managed to watch a little bit of Faina, Pirate Princess. I'm not too far in, so I still need to continue on with that. But other than that, like I've seen like I think 4 episodes so far. It's fine. It's fine.
Curious to see what you have to say when you finish it. All right, Logan. Well, what about you? What have you been watching?
Well, Fudo PI ended a couple weeks ago, so my Kamen Rider anime is unfortunately over, but I still think they're going to do a second season because it kind of sets itself up. Like, it doesn't resolve any of the plot lines with, like, the major villain group or anything, so I think, based on the fact that they're adapting a manga, I'm sure they're going to do more. It's just a matter of when, which, considering the quality of the first season, I don't want them to rush it, just to try and get it out there. Like, I'd rather they take their time with it, so I don't particularly mind if it's going to be a while, but I have been meaning to start watching the new Gundam series because it does seem like everybody's kind of raving about it, which, from what I've seen, it looks good. I just haven't had a chance to start it. I know I'm like 6 episodes behind now on it, which kind of sucks, but I'll catch up at some point. I did just watch through all of the first season of Digimon in Japanese for work-related purposes, but since we've announced that we're doing that, I can actually talk about that at this point. So,
I am very, very happy. Like everyone's jaw dropped to the floor with the Digimon announcement. My jaw dropped to the floor at the Japanese subtitled Sonic X release.
Yep, I went through that last month. That was another one that I watched all of that right around the end of September. So, and then I have to watch it, part of it again, because I have to check the 5.1 mixes on the first 39 episodes. So I get to watch through the first few story arcs of that again, which is fine. But yeah, so going through that stuff. Other than that, I think the only other things I've been watching are the season finale of Star Trek Lower Decks was last week, and the season premiere of Star Trek Prodigy was this past week. So I got another 9 weeks of CGI animated Star Trek coming up, which will be kind of nice.
Star Trek fans are definitely eating good.
It has been a very, very good year for Star Trek, with the exception of Picard Season 2 being a little bit kind of a mixed bag, but the rest of what we've gotten this year has all been really good, so it's definitely been a good year for Star Trek.
Before we move on, like I just remembered another show I was watching with a friend. It's called Call of the Night, so that's another show I've been watching. Sorry.
It's all good. I actually kind of forgot to mention that in top of the current shows, I've also been watching the new season of Mob Psycho. It's the final season, actually. So I'm very curious to see how this story ends. And it like, I just love Mob Psycho. Like, they just get right into it. Like, first episode is already like into it. Same that I can say the same with My Hero Season 6, because usually whenever a new My Hero season comes out, I'm always expecting like the first episode of the season to be some dumb filler, which spends like half the time recapping previous events, and the other half like the gang goofing off doing something. But no, like Season 6 starts out like instantly hitting off. So I was like genuinely surprised that, oh shit, okay, we're getting right into it. Anyway, I think that's enough talking about what we were watching. So first topic, because a lot of stuff happened. Last month, was it last month? No, it was like it's November already. September, like the last week of September, we had our finale of Season 2 of Primal. So Primal Season 2 has officially came and went. I enjoyed it. It's kind of weird though. Like, it's like the first season was kind of like this episodic adventure of like a caveman and a dinosaur like trekking through like prehistoric lands. But then like the next season, you kind of don't know what time period you're in, because then all of a sudden you're getting mixed in with like a bunch of these different villages, like different people, and like there are some civilizations more advanced than others. And I'm like, I literally like when they were at that point where they were being slaved by the queen and they were like invading these different countries, I'm literally saying like, what time period are we in at this point? It's very, it does not matter. Like, and then the whole like middle episode where it's just like the like primal theory, and we just get tossed in the 1800s, and like, which made a lot of people kind of think, oh, is Primal a post-apocalyptic world? Because like the primal theory states like man will revert back to their primal instincts and all that, and you see like that one prison inmate acting like a Neanderthal, like just going in, and one of the guys had to essentially get down to his level to take him out, which I like, very interesting. And then we just cut back to Spear and Fang. Yep. Rip Spear. I kind of had a feeling spoilers by the way, obviously that shouldn't, it's been a while. I kind of had a feeling he wasn't gonna make it, just by like the tone of the series. Like, I just had a feeling someone's definitely dying by the end, and yeah, it was a Spear. But at least he got to We got to have one more before departing, and the series ends with the child between him and Mira. Which Gendy has stated that he wants Primal to be like an anthology series. So I'm like wondering if we were to get a third season, if that would like focus on the girl. I could see them kind of like doing this JoJo thing where like a new season focuses on like a different member, I guess, of the line. Like season 3 be the girl, season 4 be like the child of this girl or whatever. Just like me throwing out thoughts. But what do you guys think of Primal season 2?
So I talked with the Toonami Faithful guys a while back about our thoughts on Primal season 2, and I absolutely adored it. It was fantastic, wonderful even. So I've already said my whole thing and gushed to them about everything, so I'd say check that podcast out if you can find it. I don't remember what episode number it is off the top of my head, but it's there. It's on the internet. As for my thoughts here, to kind of summarize it, I think what Gendy Tartakovsky managed to do within the first 2 seasons of Primal and the storytelling and how he's evolved from just making comedies from stuff like Two Stupid Dogs to, well, he never made Two Stupid Dogs, but he was a director on that alongside of just like a background artist and writer for it, and to Dexter's Lab, where he was the creative and showrunner for that for the first 2 seasons, then moving over to an action series with Samurai Jack, and then moving to another action series with Symbionic Titan, rest in peace.
Bring it back.
And then just taking a large hiatus after Symbionic Titan was canceled unceremoniously by Cartoon Network to work on movies for Sony for a while, and he is now back at Cartoon Network Studios making basically probably like some of the best art he's ever made in his entire career. Like,
yeah, they literally like gave him free reigns of like the entire catalogs, and then they just told him do whatever you want.
Yeah, and the fact that he's pretty much signed a permanent contract with them. It's a time contract, but I don't expect Gendy to ever leave Warner Brothers if Warner Brothers is to exist in another 100 years or whatever. But for what Gendy has done is that going from season 1 to season 2 is just a gigantic difference in how it's presented and how it's told. And it's still brilliant because each and every episode is simple, but it's effective at what it's trying to tell its audience. And I think it's so hard to tell a cohesive narrative through 10 episodes of the second season when your first season, all the episodes you could watch out of order. There's like maybe 2 episodes you have to watch back to back per season 1. But by season 2, you have to finish season 1 up, obviously, because episode 10 follows into season 2. And then going from season 2, from the start of season 1 to the end of season 2, it feels completely different, and it's its own beast of a show at the end. And I loved it because of that. It was such a swerve from going from just these episodic episodes to more self-contained, story-driven, character-motivated episodes, which is so different but so good. And as for like the idea of if they continue more, I brought it up on the Toonami Faithful podcast that, hey, I think the story between Spear and Fang, that's over. It's done. Spear is dead. Fang and his children and her children are still alive, and so is Spear's daughter. So that story is done. It's over with. It's finito. I'm sure if there is to be more, if more is to be made, I think it would be a hard reset. Just a reset of the world, reset with new characters, reset on different themes and settings. I don't think Gendy is willing to go back to the well of Spear and Fang story, because that story has been wrapped up into a nice little bow. It ended, it's done. Let's move on. But for right now, he is currently working on Unicorn Warriors Eternal, which should be airing sometime in 2023.
Okay. Logan, did you see Primal Season 2?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of said a lot of what I would have said, myself. And the biggest thing that I liked was the change in tone. Not so much change in tone, but the delivery method in that, like you said, the first 10 episodes, that made up season 1 were basically standalone. You could, like you said, you could watch them pretty much out of order, and be just fine. And, for season 2 to flip that on its head so much and turn it into such a serialized story, and yet in the middle of the season, it breaks away and does that jump forward to, effectively Charles Darwin. It's honestly, it's kind of I won't say a risky move, but it was an interesting choice, mid-season to shift away like that. But at the same time, you've kind of seen some other shows, where they'll just randomly shift focus like that. The Star Wars stuff with the Book of Boba Fett and Mandalorian kind of, did that, where they just, suddenly would shift perspective. And, I think that's a good way, honestly, to keep your audience on their toes. I guess the biggest thing that I'm thinking of, with just in regards to the whole series is, Disney CEO Bob Chapek or however it's pronounced. Recently he made those comments about how, parents put their kids to bed and they don't want to watch a cartoon. They don't want to watch animated movies. They want something for them. And, of course, anime fans, we all came out and were like, dude, you're an idiot. Like, have you ever actually paid attention to the medium? But I think Primal is
like, what company are you running to?
Yeah.
But it's like it's Primal's another perfect example of why he's so wrong. It's like, okay, yeah, he was talking about a movie, but let's face it, you could recut Primal into a couple of movie cuts if you wanted to do that. It's the point obviously is that the genre is a medium and the medium is a genre. Like, it's they go hand in hand, and of course Guillermo del Toro came out and said basically that. He said, animation is film, animation's art. You can tell stories, and the fact of the matter is you can tell stories that would be prohibitive to budget and do live action, even with as much stuff as we can do CGI and whatnot. Doing some of this stuff, even with like virtual sets and things like that, would cost an order of magnitude more than what you can do with animation, and you can still deliver a compelling story with heart and soul to it. It doesn't matter that it's animated. Like, at the end of the day, the story is what matters. And, as usual with Gendy's, productions, he delivered. And, if they do make a third season, and he does want to go in this anthology direction, I have full faith in whatever he decides to do with it, because, time and time again, he's delivered. So,
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. And it's just, I fully agree. Like, this is a medium where you can tell these very intricate and deep stories that can't be told in live action, or at least can't be without some constraints or limitations of live action. Animation is so much more than just kids media. And Genndy Tartakovsky can prove time again that he is basically pushing the boundaries of Western animation and what it can do and how far he can get away with it. And the fact of the matter is that I applaud Adult Swim for greenlighting such a risky series, because it is tough to sell this to executives, especially for Adult Swim, because this is a show that has basically no dialogue. It's a new IP, and yes, Genndy Tartakovsky may be popular within the animation community, but I wouldn't say he's like a household name or anything. He's no Craig McCracken, he's no Steven Hillenburg, he's no Walt Disney or anything, but he is certainly popular enough that I think his fans will continue to support what he creates. And it doesn't matter if it's made for children, because Genndy Tartakovsky doesn't make stuff for kids. He makes stuff that is appealing to all ages. And I truly believe, like, hey, if you give him the time and budget and resources and the marketing behind it, he can make great shit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Please make Sid by an exciting season 2. No,
I wish.
That never happened.
Oh, that would be so nice.
It would be nice. It would be a pleasant surprise that somebody actually unwrote that off, but I don't see that happening.
Anyway, so I guess we'll move on to our next topic. So, that Primal ended, and the week. Well, actually, no. The finale Primal aired the same night this happened. We had another lovely night of Batman on Toonami. In the beginning, in the beginning when this all started, like when they started doing like these DC nights, it was kind of like holy shit, because like A, they haven't done movies in how long, and B, DC stuff, which hasn't been a thing in how long, so it was like killing two birds with one stone, DC stuff and movie stuff, like to promote fandom. But it was kind of like, yo, like, all right, yeah, let's do this, man. That was like the first Batman thing. Then there was like that Wonder Woman promotion to promote a 1984, and then they did another Batman night the next year for that DC fandom. And honestly, I wasn't expecting a DC night this year just because the fandom was canceled, and like I think we only had like Black Adam coming this year, which I don't know what they would do for that. But no, they said, yeah, we're doing another Batman night. And like back then, it was kind of like, yo, this is amazing. But now it's kind of like we're expecting this. Like it's kind of like not to say that we don't enjoy it, but it's kind of like, yeah, okay, like we you know what I mean? Like we've seen this. Like, not to say we haven't seen these movies, but you get what I mean. Like it's not new anymore. It's not like, whoa.
It's like the holiday marathons. You just come to expect them.
Yep. Yes. So the two movies were Batman Hush and Mask of the Phantasm. Now, I never seen the original Batman the Animated Series. Like, I know Silver and a couple other members will probably kill me for saying that.
Great show. Watch it.
But even I knew that series and like the Mask of the Phantasm and like the other two films, I forgot what they were called, were like cult classics. So like I know Mask of the Phantasm, like a bunch of like OG fans, like Silver was screaming. I know that. Like, and yeah, I seen the movie and I enjoy it. I enjoy like the Mark Hamill's Joker, Kevin Conroy Batman, and all that. So like, yeah, I had a fun time with the movie, and like one of these days I'll check out the animated series. It's just got other shows to check out first. Batman Hush, like I didn't know this until like they aired that Wonder Woman movie that like the other year, but I guess there's like this animated DC animated universe where like a bunch of like DC direct to home videos are like part of an interconnected universe. So like there was like a Justice League movie, like the Wonder Woman movie played, and they mentioned, oh, like you fought alongside the Justice League and took down Darkseid and all that, and we're just like, when did this happen? That's when they mentioned, yeah, it's part of a animated universe.
Mm-hmm.
And then like watching the Batman Hush movie, and then Superman's in there, and then he's calling he's calling Lex Luthor for a favor, and Lex Luthor's like, I helped y'all. I helped y'all defeat Cyborg Superman and got you out of that mess. I'm technically I'm technically a member of the League now. And I'm literally like, oh yeah, animated universe, so this probably happened in another movie or something.
Ironically, it's a more cohesive universe than DC's, theatrical universe.
Yeah.
Yes. The Hush, I kind of felt like I will say I probably enjoyed Mask of the Phantasm more. Hush was okay. It was for some reason really corny. like, why is there so much heat in this film? Like, the millions of times that, like, Batman or Catwoman are, like, doing each other, or, like, Poison Ivy, like, using herself on Catwoman and Superman. I'm just like, Jesus Christ, like, someone was definitely horny when they were making this movie. Because, goddamn. Anyway, what do y'all have to say? I mean, I don't know if you guys were there when these movies were in either, or if you've seen them at least.
I have seen Mask of the Phantasm. It's a great movie. I have not seen much, so I don't really have any opinion on it.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I'm in the same position in that I haven't seen Hush. I missed it the night it aired. I did eventually, that night I was able to catch Mask of the Phantasm, and, you know, as somebody who grew up watching the original Batman animated series, you know, like, everybody says, you know, like with Superman, with any of these superheroes, like when it comes to the live action incarnations, you know, everybody has their version, and, you know, it's the same with the various animated Batman characters, and, you know, Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill, you know, like they are my Batman and my Joker when it comes to the animated stuff, and, you know, so it was great to see it back, especially because, you know, Mask of the Phantasm has, you know, Toonami history. I mean, it's run on the block 3 or 4 times, obviously, long in the past, but I think I looked it up at the time. It had been something like 21 years since it last aired on the block, which, I mean, obviously not particularly surprising, but, you know, it's always nice to see, you know, literally the classics like this make a comeback to the block. And I think, you know, that also speaks to one of the things I've said before, that, you know, I really wish, especially with, you know, the way things are going with the Toonami schedules, you know, we've harped on this for basically the entire year, you know, if they can get their hands on some of these old shows, you know, whether it's stuff that's in the Warner library or stuff that they license out anime-wise, you know, the classics are there. I think the audience will watch them. Mm-hmm. And, you know,
like Jason said, like they get closer to DC, like, so he doesn't rule out DC shows, but at the same time he's not betting on it either.
Yeah, I just, you know, I guess what I keep looking at is, you know, something like almost what they did with when they ran the Clone Wars, and, you know, I know it came as a mandate from the top. They cut like the Jar Jar focused episodes, but I think you could almost do something like that and run, you know, if they can get their hands on Batman the Animated Series and even like Batman Beyond, and, you know, basically
they did put out an HD
stuff.
Release.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's exactly it. Like, they have HD releases, so they're up to snuff for the modern broadcast era, and, you know, you don't have to run every single episode because, you know, like any, you know, cartoon from that era, you know, there's always going to be filler type stuff, and, you know, just kind of whatever episodes. But you could easily put together a big chunk of, you know, solid like best of kind of stuff. And, you know, and run, you know, even say 26 weeks of shows with something like that, you know. So I was glad to see it come back to the block, just because, like I said, it you know, puts them towards showing that these older shows that, even, you know, whether they've aired on the block or not, you know, they have potential.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think it's all just a matter of whether or not Warner Brothers is willing to give them a good deal on it. I mean, that's pretty much it. I'm hopeful because Warner Brothers is still interested in keeping Toonami afloat, so I'd say, like, hey, there could be a chance someday that they dare something DC related.
Yeah, I mean, especially if our crunchy gods are going to keep taking every single anime away from them.
They will.
Yes. So, moving on, another special monumental thing happened. Cartoon Network turned 30 years old. Yeah, so I didn't know how exactly to structure this topic, I guess we could like talk about our histories with the network and all that. Um, I apologize. I'm gonna make both of y'all feel old right now, but as like the resident Zoomer of the squad, I think I'm the youngest out of everyone in this squad. Uh, Out of the three networks, I will admit Cartoon Network was my third. My top network was Nickelodeon, then the Disney Channel, then Cartoon Network. I was too busy watching Danny Phantom and My Life as a Teenage Robot to focus on whatever Cartoon Network was airing at the time. Not to say I didn't watch them, I would occasionally tune into them. So I've seen some episodes of Foster's, and Powerpuff Girls, Dexter's Lab, and all that. Like I've seen, I definitely was there for CN City, but like I was more focused on Nickelodeon and the Disney Channel because just what they had at the time, I was more into. Like I was into Danny Phantom, Jimmy Neutron, Teenage Robot. Disney Channel was giving me Kim Possible, Jake Long, and a bunch of these other shows. And Cartoon Network, I did enjoy some of their stuff. Like I did watch Courage, Dexter's Lab, um, Billy and Mandy. Actually, no, I wasn't allowed to watch Billy and Mandy. Be- it's because I'm in a religious family. I mentioned this when I talked about my history with Toonami. Like I do remember seeing ads of old school Toonami, but I just never tuned in because I just knew that I would get in trouble for watching that. Um, what I did eventually put more time into Cartoon Network. So a lot of my time spent on Cartoon Network was during the 2007 onward, the Yes and the Nude era of Cartoon Network. So yes, I past its prime, I guess you could say. That's when I was watching a lot of Chowder, a lot of Flapjack, and Total Drama. Everyone talks about being a Cartoon Fridays kid. I was a Har Thursday kid. I'm definitely making y'all feel old. I'm sorry. So I watched a lot of that. Camp Lazlo was the shit. Also, that was like the time when they were just getting a bunch of these Canadian shows, like example, Total Drama, but also 16. I saw Robot Boy, and of course, I was there when they premiered the #1 show on the network, Johnny Test. Like, God. Like,
I remember when Johnny Test aired on Kids WB.
Yeah. I still say, like, my opinion on Johnny Test was I liked the first season and I hated everything else after.
Second season
Like,
was fine.
Second season, I just hated when, like, one, they moved to Flash. I just loved
But that was past season 2, I believe. I think it was season 3 onward is when they moved over to Flash.
I literally I remember seeing it on Netflix one day and looking at the episode order. It was literally season 2 onwards that they went Flash.
Maybe it is 2 episodes.
I also hated because they changed the theme song from season 2 onwards, and I hated the new theme. And I don't know why. It just, like, the vibe of the show felt so different, and a lot of the characters just didn't feel the same after the first season. Like, it's been a long while since I've seen Johnny Test, but I still stand that I enjoyed season 1 only. Other than that, yeah, that was like the era that I was watching a lot of Chowder. I was watching a lot of Flapjack, stuff like that. The CN Real era. So, dude, what would happen? Destroy, build, destroy. I watched freaking I forgot the name of that kid with the movie, like the live action movie with the kid, and he has
Reanimated.
Reanimated. Oh.
Which actually was before all that. That was 2005.
So yeah, that the show because I know how to show. And then eventually came 2010, and my real binge on Cartoon Network when Check It happened, with three shows. Adventure Time, I literally remember the week it came out. Regular show, and a show that definitely did not last long, Robotomy. I actually think that I've seen every single episode. I remember tuning in every single week, and I just remember like seeing the last episode because nothing came after that. I remember seeing ads for Symbionic Titan 2, but I never watched it. I wouldn't watch it until way later. So yeah, Adventure Time. Funny enough, because I mention this all the time, and I don't get too personal on here, but it's like I was regulated a lot on the things that I could watch, and one of the reasons why I didn't watch Cartoon Network a lot was just because my folks get too judgy with what I'm allowed to consume. Hell, I mentioned Danny Phantom on Nickelodeon. That was like it is still one of my favorite cartoons ever. But Jesus Christ, that was like a pain to watch back then because it's a show that deals with ghosts, and my religious family don't like that. It's definitely was like those judge a book by its cover type mentalities. And Adventure Time, a regular show, was definitely one of those too. Literally, I remember the second episode of regular show where they were playing with arcade machines, and I just remember one of them became alive, and it was literally like a pixelated devil. And my folks saw me watch that, and they were like, "Yeah, you're not allowed to watch the show anymore." Then there was the Adventure Time, the episode where Marceline's dad came on screen, where he literally popped out of a fiery pit and began sucking Finn's soul. Yeah. So like a lot of these shows that I enjoyed as a kid, I had to watch in secret. I stopped watching Cartoon Network around the 2013-ish year. I think some of the last things I saw on there was ironically Sonic Boom, and that wasn't because I was a Cartoon Network kid, but just because I was already on the internet at the time, and I knew that Sonic Boom was a video game that was coming, and it was getting a cartoon alongside it. So I was like, okay, Cartoon Network, alright, let me tune in and see Sonic Boom. And yeah, I know this is just something, and I know a lot of people give praise to a lot of their shows now. I just, I always have a hard time going back to, just some American shows. Like, I know Infinity Train's great, Steven Universe, Regular Peak, all those shows that they come out now are, great. It's my main thing, and this isn't even just Cartoon Network, but Nickelodeon and Disney also. I just tend not to watch a lot of these shows just because me seeing a lot of the going on in the animation industry, there could be a great show, but I guarantee you I'll start watching this and this show will get canceled. It will not have a good it will not have a conclusion, or it won't have a good conclusion. So I'm always hesitant on watching a lot of these shows because I don't want to get invested in something that most likely will not have an ending. I never seen Infinity Train, but I know that was a perfect example. I don't know if it had an ending. Sam, you could probably say that, but
each season is an anthology. It concludes its own thing. They wanted to do more, but where they left off was good enough, I guess.
So there was that. I know what's that show? Owl House was another example where
But that's Disney Channel, so
yeah, I know. I got off topic, but yeah. So maybe one of these days I will give these shows a chance. I did watch a couple of Steven Universe when it was new, but I just never got into it. It's just I guess my age is just showing to where I'm not a huge fan of these bubbly, haha 12-minute episode type shows that they've been doing now. But that's just me. And I guess that's my history with cartoon. I don't watch it anymore. Actually, I did tune in when they were doing that whole 30th anniversary thing, and they were actually airing some of the old stuff like Ed, Edd and Eddie and Dexter. But yeah, I know I went on a little too long, and I'm usually the one that likes to be fast about it, but I guess that's my history there. So, what about you, Sam?
My history, well, goes all the way back to the far depths of time and space itself. Now, I was just a little kid, but I believe my earliest memories are back when they were first starting out with original content, because when Cartoon Network first began, it was nothing but syndicated shows of Hanna-Barbera's library and old MGM cartoons, old Looney Tunes shorts that they were able to air alongside alongside a bunch of other old cartoons. They still aired old shows, but that was like later into the night and far out from there. So I started out watching Cartoon Network when they were beginning to have original content fill up their lineup. So I was there back when, no, I don't think I was there when Dexter's Lab first premiered, but I do remember a lot of the original Cartoon Network originals that did air. I remember Cartoon Fridays. I remember, oh god, going into the depths of my mind, I remember watching Space Ghost. Like, that technically was like the first original, unless you
Technically, it was the Moxie show.
Unless you count the Moxie show, but for most people, I would think most people would probably say, like, hey, the first one that people knew the Cartoon Network for was this weird little fucking Adobe Premiere ass talk show with a forgotten character from Hanna-Barbera's library, Space Ghost. And obviously that propelled into what would become Adult Swim. Well, we're not going to go into Adult Swim right now because that's not, Adult Swim's not celebrating anything this year. They can drink, but they can drink alone. But as
Just
far
like me, haha.
sorry. But for me, like, my history kind of goes back from when they first started airing original content. And then going into the 2000s, I would keep up with Cartoon Network because out of all three of the major at least three of the major kids networks, your Nick's, your Disney, and then there's Cartoon Network. So I was mostly watching Cartoon Network. Not to say I never checked out stuff on Nickelodeon. I remember watching stuff like Oh Yeah Cartoons on Nickelodeon, which was basically their answer to What a Cartoon from Cartoon Network, which I miss those short initiatives, which they are bringing back with cartoons. And I do remember watching Disney Channel stuff, but most of what Disney Channel was airing wasn't animation. It was just live action stuff. And I have fond memories of the live action stuff. But,
of course, who could forget the best anime ever, Corey in the house?
Mm-hmm. But to make a very long story short, basically, I've been there from the beginning. At a certain point, I did fall off because I wasn't really thrilled with what they were offering me as a viewer. I understand with how times change, you need to adapt or you die. And CN adapted. Maybe they didn't adapt in the very subtle or best way possible, but the network always seems to be very open about experimentation and doing new things. Unlike Nick, who's just like creatively bankrupt, and it's like, well, we need SpongeBob to stay alive, which I think is bullshit. You don't need SpongeBob to stay alive.
This show didn't do SpongeBob numbers. Canceled.
Yeah.
Get sent to Nicktoons.
Yeah. And for Disney, like, as they seem to be more or less focusing on just like, well, we're slowly pulling away from Disney Channel and Disney XD, and we're going to slowly close those down over time to move everything over to Disney Plus, which I understand that is your future business model, and that's how you're going to stay afloat for the next 20 years. But as it stands right now, CN, in terms of the content that they are producing, shows that are still in production and still being made, they are still trying to do new things and create new experiences. I don't know for how long. Maybe it won't be for long. I don't know. That's a different discussion for a different day. But even going by right now, because we had talked about Primal, that's still a Cartoon Network production. Cartoon Network Studios worked on that. And it just kind of goes to show, like, hey, CN's willing to do new and exciting things and greenlight new and exciting properties and ideas. And it doesn't have to be tied down to existing IPs all the time. Maybe they are going back to the well with stuff like the Powerpuff Girls reboot, and a Foster's reboot with Craig at the helm.
It's kind of sad because they asked Craig what made him decide to revisit those, and he literally said no one wants anything original. I pitched like 12 original things, and no one
pitched like
was
16.
excited.
He pitched 16 originals to Netflix, and Netflix turned all of them down except for Kid Cosmic,
he said they were disappointed.
Absolutely asinine and insane to think about. This is the man who created the Powerpuff Girls and Foster Song, two of the most popular shows in CN's catalog, with the Powerpuff Girls being one of the most recognizable brands. Maybe it's not a SpongeBob, but it's one of the most recognizable cartoon brands alive, so much so that they can continue to sell merchandise of it. It's ridiculous that networks aren't really looking at old creatives like that and being like, you're valuable, sure, but your new ideas aren't super valuable because we don't want to put in the money for marketing it, which is absolutely stupid and ridiculous, which is kind of a miracle if Gendy gets the green light to make more original content and new IPs, whereas Craig is just like, well, back to the Powerpuff Girls and Foster's line, although it does generally sound like he did want to go back, and there was a genuine interest to go back, and I also tend to think like, hey, Cartoon Network was probably going to reboot those regardless if Craig McCracken said yes or no. So it probably was a thing of, okay, here's the deal. I'll create it. We'll pitch an idea. We'll work around this. This will be produced at Hanna-Barbera Studios Europe. And this will be sort of Craig passing the torch along, kind of similar to how Steven Hillenburg came back for the later seasons with SpongeBob and kind of just gently guided the new generation of artists and storytellers into SpongeBob and how they should handle it. And I think that's how Craig's going to go about Powerpuff Girls, because I think, this brand will probably exist long after he's gone. But, I think for what Cartoon Network did for its 30th, I think it was good. Maybe not the best year ever for them.
Everyone always points to the 20th.
Yeah, but the 20th was a really good 20th anniversary. They did a lot of good things that year. And I think this year, maybe it wasn't massive, but they did a lot of great things. Like, they signed a contract with Gendy Tartakovsky to be at Warner Brothers Animation for a very long time. And then months later, you hear, hey, Craig McCracken is back at Cartoon Network after over 10 years. Oh my God, he's been gone from CN for so long. And I don't want to sound like this, but I have never really gelled with Craig McCracken's work outside of Cartoon Network. I don't know if it's because with Wander, there was some
I was going to say, I hear Wander was good.
I could never get into Wander over Yonder. And it's not because I don't like the idea. It's just, there's something about it that kind of feels like this is corporate man at Disney. This is what you can get away with. We're not allowing this. We're not allowing that. And it's kind of strange because it's like Gravity Falls got away with like pretty much anything. And I just don't.
But if you hear what Alex Hirsch later says, and he's been very open.
Well, yeah, obviously, like, there's arguments all the time with standards and practices, even at Cartoon Network. But even at Cartoon Network, they seemed very much lax at what those creatives could do and get away with. Disney seemed very, very controlling over every little thing all their creators could do, and the amount of stuff that they could get away with. It's impressive. And even with stuff like Kid Cosmic, I still need to watch more of it. I've only seen like maybe a bit of season 1. But I still didn't really jive with it. So, I mean, here's hoping, the Powerpuff Girls reboot he proposes goes into full production and it moves on and we hear more about it, and I hope it turns out great. As for anything else that happened this year, I think they did a pretty good job promoting their 30th. They had a live stream kind of doing a lot of things. I'm sure they wanted to do more, but other circumstances prevented that, which is sad, but oh well. Not much you can do there other than to move on and kind of just move on. It is what it is.
Okay, Logan, what about you?
Well, let me get my get out of my rocking chair here and let Grandpa tell you. So my Cartoon Network, like my whole history with it, like the thing is for me, because I'm a child of the 80s, I grew up with the original cartoon block, which was USA's Cartoon Express. And if you are young enough that you don't know what that is, if you go look it up on Wikipedia, you'll see that it's effectively proto-Cartoon Network up until Turner bought the Hanna-Barbera library. And once they took all that stuff away from USA, that's like a year later Cartoon Network launched with all of that content, with the exception of like 2 or 3 shows that they had a longer contract on, which is kind of funny when you think about it, because look at what's happening with Toonami. Literally the same thing. Somebody else has the entire library and basically took it away from them. So, kind of sucks that they're getting paid back like that. But yeah, so the thing was, like, for me, when Cartoon Network launched, where I lived at the time didn't have Cartoon Network. Like, the cable system didn't pick it up. And so for the first few years of Cartoon Network's existence, like, I didn't even really know it existed, to be honest. And when I moved to where I live now, when I first moved here, we had a fairly small cable system, but what they did that was kind of weird, and I've honestly never seen a cable system that ever did it before, and obviously now with the way cable is now, you'll never see it again, but they did this thing where they had a channel that ran 24/7, and like every 2 hours it would change to a different channel that wasn't on their service. So like, and it wasn't fully predictable. Like, sometimes I'd get home from school at like 3 o'clock and Cartoon Network would be on, but then the next day, if you turn this channel on, Cartoon Network might not be on. It might be like the Food Network or something. But basically, I was getting little snippets of Cartoon Network, and again, because it was 24/7, I don't think Cartoon Network was running 24/7 back then, but I'm not really sure. But like, you could basically try this channel, you effectively try your luck at this channel and just get what you got. And so, I'd catch stuff like the original What a Cartoon Show, so like the pilots for Dexter's Lab and Johnny Bravo and all that stuff. Caught the early Space Ghost Coast to Coast stuff when they were running that. And it wasn't until, I think it was honestly just before Toonami launched, that we actually got the full Cartoon Network, like, linear channel properly. And so, basically, the biggest problem I had with that was when it launched, Cartoon Network didn't have a West Coast feed. So anytime they'd advertise, like, Toonami starts at 4 o'clock, well, that's all well and good if you live on the East Coast, but for me, it started at 1 o'clock when I was still in school. So that was always kind of a bummer, and my VHS recorder got to work out because I was constantly recording the block and recording over the tapes and watching everything I could that way. And basically, I think I caught it at just the right time, because obviously, again, as somebody who was watching the USA cartoon block in the 80s when I was 4 or 5 years old, late 90s Cartoon Network, I was getting into high school, so the move to stuff like Toonami with the anime stuff was, basically, I was their exact target demographic for the block. So I moved away from the Cartoon Network stuff, honestly, before they really got into, heavy work with their originals. Like, again, I saw the stuff like, Dexter's Lab and like the early stuff, but, once they started moving into their own originals past there, I was, it was basically, if I wasn't watching Toonami, I wasn't watching Nickelodeon, I wasn't watching Disney Channel, I wasn't watching Cartoon Network, because, well, let's be honest, I was a teenager in high school. I was more interested in girls. So,
Yes.
but like, so that was, kind of my thing with Cartoon Network. And then, of course, when they canceled Toonami, I'd already kind of fallen off the wagon with it a little bit. And so it was kind of like, whatever, it's all in the past. And it wasn't until they relaunched Toonami that I even really started paying attention to Cartoon Network all that much. But, of course, that was because it was part of Adult Swim, which I was still watching. Because, yet again, I was in and still am in the target demographic for Adult Swim as a whole. So, basically, I mean, my early memories of Cartoon Network are, kind of in the middle ground where the anniversary stuff never really celebrates it because they're usually really focused on the early days, which I, like I said, wasn't there for, or whatever's current with the network. And like the 20th anniversary, I wasn't watching any of their stuff at the time, so I didn't really have a whole lot of history with it. But I mean, I guess at the end of the day, with all the cuts and everything that we've seen from WB, it's nice to see that they're at least still celebrating something. They could have turned around and just cut the damn thing instead.
Yeah, like today, like nowadays, we're just kind of like wondering, like, there was a death hoax for Cartoon Network because someone, like, definitely didn't use the right words and just said Cartoon Network Studios is dead, Cartoon Network as a whole is dead, and it was trending. Cartoon Network literally had to come out and say, guys, we're not dead. It's because freaking WBD just wants to be canceling everything left and right, and it's just like, mergers are fun, kids. Like, I don't like. Very interesting to see how they're gonna continue onwards.
I think I'll just
yeah. So I guess that takes care of that topic. So moving on, we had another show on Toonami and dearly departed Lupin the Third Part 6. I know Sam probably doesn't have a lot to say, but like I know Logan's a Lupin fan, and like I saw the whole thing. I saw part, like, in terms of Lupin, I've only seen what Toonami has given, which is part 4, 5, and 6. I've seen Castle of Cagliostro, and then there was that one special that like TMS made for free, like uploaded for free on YouTube for a little while. I forgot what the name of that was, but I remember seeing that. I like, Logan could probably like answer this better than me, but like I noticed, like, first, like, yeah, I love Lupin, and I'll be down to watch like any series or season that they put out. I just never understand the plot to a lot of these parts, because I noticed this to where, like, whenever like a new part happens, like the first 5 or 6 episodes, maybe 10, will have like some sort of arc where like stuff happens, but then like that arc will end, and then like we'll just get like another bunch of episodes where it's just a bunch of random things happening. And then like the last couple episodes, like the last 5 or 6 episodes, will be like another arc that ends the season. And it's just like, I kind of noticed that, like I noticed in part 5 they did these things to where like they had like these 4 separate arcs within the show, and then they were separated by these mini little filler episodes. And then with part 6, I kind of noticed like they had that whole thing in England, and then it just kind of switched to this thing regarding his mom, or his supposed mother. But then like there was just a bunch of randomness in the middle, and then we come to find out late in the end, oh, all those random women that were in those filler like episodes, oh, they were actually important because what's her name trained them to like hypnotize Lupin or whatever. And yeah, like my attention span with like during the middle of part 6 was kind of like going off. But I did pick back up when the whole like brainwashing plot kicked in. But I did enjoy it. And of course, Fujiko.
Ma'am.
Yes. Too bad Sam wasn't here for that.
Yeah, so I mean, the thing is with like the whole, multiple plot arcs, and that whole thing, I kind of look at it akin to like Ghost in the Shell standalone complex, where obviously, it's in the show's name, and they had the standalone episodes and the complex episodes that kept the arcs going from, overall the season. And that's, Lupin kind of really got started with that, I would say, with the Fujiko, kind of side story series, the woman called Fujiko Mine, which I know Jason commented years ago that they actually had tried to get that, but standards and practices were like, no, there's way too many boobs in this. You guys cannot air this. And to be fair, whereas you look at stuff like Kill la Kill and it's like, okay, maybe they wouldn't have let that fly in 2014, but 3 or 4 years later they let it go, that kind of thing. There is absolutely no chance that the woman called Fujiko Mine would ever have been able to make it on the block. Like, hands down, just would never work. But the thing is, it kind of did the same thing. Maybe not quite to the same extent that some of the new seasons, the parts 4 through 6 have done. But that's kind of where it started. But the thing you also have to remember is, even with that, if we count that as Lupin's return to TV, versus part 4, the last Lupin series that was a TV series and not just the TV specials was back in the 80s with part 3. So the thing is, the TV landscape has changed so much. And so, I think they've kind of changed their focus on trying to, hook people in. For me, the biggest problem I'm honestly seeing is it feels like they've been having diminishing returns. I still think part 4 is my favorite of any of the Lupin seasons. It's the modern reinvention of Lupin, but it still keeps everything the way, I won't say the way that everything was done before, but it feels like the old Lupin still. But the problem I see is, they've produced three shows in the span of roughly 8 years. I think it's been in total since part 4 came out, and I feel like they're running into the same problem that they had with part 2 and part 3, and that was part 2 ran for 100 something episodes. Like, I mean, I don't even remember how many total it is, and part 3 was a 50 episode show, and I think they just got to a point back then where it was diminishing returns and the audience interest was starting to wane. And that's when they switched over to doing like the annual TV specials where they're, an hour and a half, 2 hours long, and, you get one a year. And, I'm starting to personally feel like that's where Lupin needs to go back to for a little while, and they need to put it on the shelf and let the franchise rest up a little bit, because there's only so much you can do with it. And while I liked part 6, it also, from my understanding, was animated by a different studio than the main one that does stuff like it did parts 4 and 5. and they're doing one of the upcoming ones. I believe they're doing the Lupin Part Zero, like Child Lupin. It's a 6-episode miniseries.
Surprised they're even like doing the whole kids babies trend with Lupin.
Yeah, it's kind of weird because the biggest problem with that is, you're not going to be able to have Jigen or Goemon or Fujiko. If you do, it's going to feel really contrived. Especially because Lupin Part 1, while yes, we see that Jigen and Lupin already know each other then, and they clearly have a familiarity with Fujiko, like, they meet Goemon within the first few episodes of Part 1. So, yeah, okay, you could argue, like, oh, yeah, Lupin and Goemon have been friends since they were kids, which doesn't really mesh with stuff, but it's like, all right, whatever. But, it's one of those things where, again, take the babies aspect. You look at Muppet Babies, like, the original Babies show that they basically did, and it was, here's all the Muppets, but they're kids. Well, you're not going to be able to do, oh, here's Kermit, but we're not going to have Miss Piggy or Fozzie or any of them. So, are they going to do Lupin without any of the others? Maybe, and maybe they'll get away with it because it's only 6 episodes. I don't know. It's weird, and they are doing another special, which they seem to be setting in the sort of Part 3 Pink Jacket era, where they're crossing over with the show Cat's Eye, which is good because I've worked on that show, and it's basically Cheesecake and cat burglars. So Lupin, teaming up with them or being against them or whatever, it makes sense. But I just feel like that's where Lupin needs to go back to, because as much as I've liked, I like Part 4, Part 5, and Part 6, but it feels like they're diminishing each season, and it's getting more and more like, all right, how much longer are we going to keep dragging this out? Like, let's go back to the specials where you can really focus on a tight story and, one and done.
Yeah, like I'm not too knowledgeable with Lupin, but like it's been a minute since I've seen Part 4 because I haven't seen it since Toonami aired it. But like I know like that was like the big one because that was like the return to TV, and I enjoyed Part 5 too. But it was like Part 6 is like, okay, I was invested in the beginning, but then like in the middle I just kind of started to fall off. But then like the end happens with the brainwashing plot, and then you're being told, oh, like all these people you met in those like filler like random episodes were actually important, and we're just like, wait, what? Like, but I mean, like, I like Lupin and I'll watch whatever they have next, but like I do kind of agree with you there, Logan. We'll just have to wait and see on that, I guess.
Yeah, well, like you said, it's one of the things that with Part 4 was, it was the big return to TV. Part 5 was, coming up on the 50th anniversary, and so it did stuff like, it did a Red Jacket episode, it did a Pink Jacket episode. They were subtle, but it did those little homages.
And then so like that whole like OVA where like they went back to the beginning.
Right, and so that's the thing with Part 6 is it's like, what is it that Part 6 is doing that makes it stand out? And honestly, it doesn't feel like there's really anything to it. Like, okay, yeah, cool, he was in London for a while, kind of a new setting, whereas like Part 3 did a lot of stuff in New York, Part 4 was in Italy for a lot, Part 5 was in France. Like, okay, set it somewhere, but it didn't feel like it did anything that really made it set itself apart. So yeah. It is what it is. But like you said, it's Lupin on Toonami. It has a history, and at the end of the day, I mean, even the worst Lupin episode, I can kill 25 minutes watching a mediocre Lupin episode. And, it's not the worst time, and at least I love the dub cast. They have my personal favorite dub cast with Tony Oliver and Richard Epcar, and so it is what it is. Could be worse.
All right, well, I guess we should move on to the next topic. Originally I was thinking of like covering this like when it premiered and like, oh, what's our first impressions? But considering it's only 4 episodes, it's easier to talk about it in one go. But yes, we had another Toonami original series called Housing Complex C. It premiered on the 1st of October. It was pretty much the spooky show during the month. Yeah, I enjoyed it? Question mark. I wasn't really scared though, or like closing my eyes. Like it didn't really feel like a horror show. And there was just like a lot of plot dump occasionally. Like, oh, this thing happened and this thing happened, and you know, like this thing happened in history, and that could mean this is gonna happen, like kind of thing. I'm still kind of questioning a lot of things, like, okay, she's a god, and like you do kind of pick up on a lot of that stuff if you rewatch. Like when I was rewatching it during the marathon, like, oh hey, the calendars say 2000 on it, and then she's also like, they took a selfie together, and she's asking, oh wow, this is a skinny camera or whatever. I didn't think about that until the marathon, and she said, I was like, oh wait. And just like how she just kind of kept that whole building stuck in the same year for like God knows how long and all that. But then all of a sudden these foreigners move in, and these new people just come in and trample on her life. And yeah, it, like, I'll let Sam one speak, because I don't even know what to say. What do you all have to say?
So my thoughts are, it was okay. It was just okay. It was fine. The problem, again, like I agree with you. Like it wasn't really scary for 4 episodes. I also felt like it could have used a couple more. It should have been a whole season, maybe, because a lot of my problems of Housing Complex C stem from the fact is that either A, they don't explain enough, or B, they explain too much, or C, they kind of leave it up for the viewer to interpret. And I'm fine with all of those, but for 4 episodes and for it to be a horror series, you need to, keep the audience engaged. And honestly, as a mini-series, I think it's dreadful to watch week to week. For something that you watch for 2 hours in like a marathon setting, perfect, because it kind of goes by quickly without you even noticing it. And then I also tend to think like, hey, it tells its story well enough, but also I just don't think it's still any good. I think like even at its best, it is just okay. I like the Lovecraftian vibes. Like that is like the best aspect of the show. Like it's very, very clearly Lovecraft. Like there's Cthulhu in the fucking show, for God's sakes. So it's very clear, like that's what the C in Housing Complex C stands for. It is Cthulhu. So obviously, like the god itself is supposedly Cthulhu. That's my theory anyway.
It
that god,
Cthulhu, they called it.
Yeah, but it's Cthulhu. It's fucking Cthulhu. But regardless, like I like the Lovecraftian themes. The real reality is that they don't really do a whole lot with it. It's just like, oh, it's just window dressing. It's like, okay. If this had more episodes, maybe you could explore more into Lovecraftian themes, do a lot more of the characters. But for 4 episodes, like I was just sitting there bored out of my mind, because 4 episodes is just not enough for me to really be invested into these characters or to be frightened. at what's going on. I hate being so negative about this, but this being another Toonami original, and I personally think it's a dud. Like that's a problem because these originals are what we have to look forward to every year from now on. And if that's the case, like, we're gonna have months and months of droughts before we get any new content. You know, the show has to be good or great, even. Like, they can't be okay anymore. They have to be good. They have to land. They have to be better than what we have expected. And for the most part, their originals in the modern Toonami era has not been great. So I think if you're looking for something scary to watch, well, we'll talk about the next show that's coming to Toonami soon. But for Housing Complex C, it's okay. I kind of recommend it to watch once, but it's just that it's a one and done for me. Like, I marathoned through it for this discussion. It's fine in a marathon setting, but I can't really wholeheartedly say it's good enough to rewatch every year on Halloween. It's not that. It's not going to be that show, and it never was with its episode count and how it wanted to tell a story. And then also, being its own original IP, I just don't necessarily think it kind of warranted being a TV miniseries. Maybe it should have been a direct-to-video movie for HBO Max or something, because that flows, like the way it flows feels like it would have been better suited for a theatrical movie experience. Maybe give it a little bit of budget, obviously, to make it a theatrical movie. But as a TV miniseries, I thought it was pretty much overall boring. The only like really exciting episode was like the final one, and that's kind of when it goes full on fucking campy ass horror, which is great. Like, it's fun, but it's never gets to the point of being scary. Like, it wants to be scary and it wants to be taken as true horror, but it never really reaches that point, like ever.
Like, yeah. I just like you kind of summed up my thoughts there. I'm just like, I'm terrible at like putting my thoughts into words. I like it. Yeah, it was okay in my opinion. Like, it's better than Black Lotus, I'll say that. At least it kept my attention.
That's a low bar to clear, though.
I know, right?
And I mean, I say that as a big Blade Runner fan. Like, oh, man.
Hey guys, let's watch episode 1 again.
That didn't do it any favors. Like, we'll we don't want to go off onto that tangent, but that definitely did not do it any favors.
Yeah. But it was just it's just like, and here's the thing with me, I'm not a horror person. I will not watch a horror movie. Hell, I hate going to a theater and they play a trailer for a horror movie, because it's just, I hate like those experiences. So I'm like the worst with horror. And like when I'm sitting through this show and I'm just like, it's okay, I'm not pissing my pants, that's when I'm like, yeah, no, like if I'm not scared, then yeah.
I want to make it clear. I like horror. I mean, I probably will not go to a movie theater and see. Well, actually, that's not true. I sat down and watched a couple horror movies in the theater. But as it stands, like, I enjoy horror. I love horror themes, and horror can tap into a lot more deeper topics than maybe a drama or a comedy or an action series could probably tackle, because horror is instinctual fear and prejudices against other. It's hard for me to really explain it, but horror is a lot more than just like, oh, it's scaring the audience. Like, it's a lot more of tapping into the primordial fear of what humans fear the most, and also kind of tackling very serious topics if it wants to go that route. And sometimes they do that, sometimes they don't. Sometimes it just can't be as fun and you get like a good slasher movie out of it. But I just, with Housing Complex C, I said wants, and I'll continue to beat it into the ground, is that it's not scary. It wants to be taken as a seriously scary show, but for the most part, like most of the time, you are sitting there waiting for something scary to show up and happen, and it never does. And until the final episode, it still never happens.
What about you, Logan? What are your thoughts on the show?
Well, the things I keep going back to with it are, like Sam said, the aspect of, because I didn't watch it week to week. I ended up deciding, I figured either A, they were going to do a marathon, which of course, proved correct. But even if they did, it was like, okay, it's 4 episodes. Like I can shotgun this on, on a Sunday afternoon if I need to. So, I decided to just sit down and wait and watch it as a marathon. And, that, to me, it flowed better. I mean, it still definitely had its issues, but it flowed better. And I guess what I kind of keep circling to on that is the creator, or the writer, author, or whatever he's credited as, Amphibian is what he goes by. He comes from a visual novel background. He's a visual novel developer. And I keep looking at it from that perspective and thinking, if you took this story and fleshed it out with branching paths and, and just the ability to stretch the pacing and not so much, like you said, had this been able to be a full season or even let's say 6 episodes, whatever. But if you've been able to stretch the pacing out and when you look at it from a visual novel perspective and you're able to do that stretching because for one thing, unless it's fully voiced, you've got your audience reading this thing. And so, you're going through it at a certain pace. And I feel like that might be one of the weaknesses that, while I could see the quality in the writing in what he was going for, I think his visual novel background might have been a hindrance because he was so constrained by the limitations of having to be in a TV format. And if Adult Swim said, yeah, we're only going to pay for 4 episodes, so, figure out what you're going to do with 4 episodes, for somebody who's used to the freedom of, if you're going to make a visual novel that lasts, 16 hours, or you're going to make one that lasts 4 hours, that's up to your storytelling, but you can make it at your pace. And, obviously we don't know what the constraints were and whether it was his call or, Adult Swim's call or whoever. But I feel like that's probably where a lot of the weaknesses from the show, to me, came in. And I mean, obviously I don't want to put that all on his shoulders, but, it is his story. And, thankfully, it's not one of those things where it's like, oh, there's, 9 different pieces of supplemental material that you also have to go seek out to understand it. But, the point of the weakness in the, paying attention and sticking to it was definitely there. And I think splitting it up into episodes definitely did it a disservice compared to had it been produced as like a 2-hour movie kind of thing. I think that alone would have helped it just from watching it in a marathon session. And I guess, speaking to the broader point of, the horror angle, I like that Adult Swim is going this route because we talked about this before in the lead up to it, and I think we mentioned in the September podcast. Maki at Production IG has said that, the horror anime market is relatively untapped when you look at, especially when you consider compared to like the isekai, flood that we see these days. But like Andre running in here, like, did someone say isekai? Right? But like the thing is, I definitely understand them wanting to tap this market. The biggest thing I keep thinking about here with that perspective, and I can't decide which way I would prefer it, is I keep looking at what if Uzumaki had come out on schedule. I mean, we know why they keep delaying it, and I'm in favor of why they're delaying it. But if in another universe, if it had come out on schedule like they were expecting it to, and it had been the first one, to the block, obviously we don't know what the quality of the show is going to be like, so it's hard to compare them.
Mm-hmm.
But we do know Uzumaki and its pedigree as far as horror manga and whatnot.
It has a lot of like they announced it, and a lot of people took notice, and a lot of big people too. Hideo Kojima took notice. We had Hideo Kojima looking at. Well, they weren't looking at us. He retweeted.
Well, right.
When
yeah.
But
but you know what I mean.
Yeah, but like the thing about it is, obviously, again, like I said, we don't know the quality of how the anime adaptation is going to turn out. But just going off the strengths of Uzumaki as it exists today, what I can't help but try to think about is, does Housing Complex, is it going to hurt the chances of people going, well, their first horror anime was kind of do I really want to give the second one a chance? So does that hurt them? And then I look at it from the other angle of, what if Uzumaki had come out first and had been very successful, again, based on the strengths of what we know of how it exists right now? Would Housing Complex have ended up feeling like an even bigger disappointment because it didn't reach those heights? And maybe it's not fair to compare them because, again, Uzumaki is an existing property. It has such a long history and pedigree that, maybe it's not fair to compare them. But at the end of the day, the audience is going to make that comparison whether we like it or not.
Yeah.
So, that's the biggest thing I keep going back to is, if Adult Swim does want to, keep doing, and if they want to do like a 4-episode thing, once a year even, are they going to be able to keep living up to it if, this is their first foray into it and Uzumaki's the next thing we're going to get? Like, Uzumaki's going to hit hard almost no matter what.
Yeah,
and
great.
So it's like, we're good there. Like, we don't have to worry about that. But, what comes after that? And again, if they do let's say a third show, it goes right back into that same position of, if Uzumaki is a real high, those are big shoes for whatever comes next to step into. And I just, it's hard to put it into words, but it's like, they need to, I don't want to say they need to step it up, but at the same time, like, that's exactly what I mean. And, they need to really look at, they need to stop limiting themselves. If they're really focused on this whole 4-episode thing, that maybe that's not such a good idea. Maybe they're hurting themselves with that. I don't know. It's a tough situation because, there's so many what ifs that you can throw at this, and, there's no right answer.
Yeah. And I do agree, like, we don't even know the situation. Like, is this a mandate from Adult Swim? Are they only funding episodes, like, this limited amount of episodes? Or is this the production side to say, no, we have a story, we want to tell it in this amount of time, and Adult Swim's okay with that? And if that's the case, like, that's cool, that's very cool, but so far, unless you count the Crunchyroll collaboration projects, like, so far Adult Swim hasn't really invested, like, a full season of a show. They've only done, like, 4 seasons of Fooly Cooly, which are 6 episodes each, which is bizarre and weird. Like, I get the lineage with that because Fooly Cooly's VA had 6 episodes in total, but why limit 6 episodes to a series when I feel like you could just do 12 episodes and make it one whole season rather than splitting them up? And then, like, with these originals so far, like, Uzumaki is 4 episodes. There's a new one, I believe, by the director of
Ninja Kamui.
Ninja Kamui.
We don't know anything about it, though.
We don't know anything about it, but I believe it's like 6 episodes, I think. So
no, I don't think they've set a count yet. I just know that it's from the same director as the show that won't come to Toonami ever. And like that, and the Rick and Morty anime, which is still up in the air if it's going to be on Toonami.
It won't. It is going to be airing only on Adult Swim at the moment, which makes sense.
And the thing there is, it's like they've said they're only going to do it as subtitle only, which, I'm still blown away because Jason has always said that subs tank the block, and that was the only reason they ever did them on the April Fool's block, was because it was like, who gives a shit about ratings on April Fool's Day? Like, have some fun with it. But but the thing is, like, even that, Rick and Morty, that's 10 episodes, and it's like, okay, you're putting 10 episodes into a sub-only show that you're not even going to air on Toonami.
Yeah.
Why are you not putting that level towards these other shows? And it's like,
it's Rick
you
and
could
Morty.
argue it really coolly, like, 6 and 6, okay, that's a 12-episode season. That's pretty typical of most anime these days. But, I don't know, it feels like there's, since the Crunchyroll break, it feels like there's a loss of investment. And it's unfortunate that, if Crunchyroll is really putting that much forward, because, I feel like that's a lot of value that they're losing out on.
Yeah. I think, like, this may go back even decades ago, because they did invest in the Big O season 2, and I'm not going to say it was a failure. It did very well for them, but maybe there was a case of, like, they invested so much into it that they were hoping for a larger return of investment on it, and they never got it.
Didn't they invest in Standalone Complex?
No, that was
No, they did invest in Standalone Complex. It
was a weird clusterfuck because it's Production IG, Manga Entertainment, and then Adult Swim has perpetual television rights to it.
Right. But then, like, you also look at, like, IGPX. They did invest, that's a 26-episode show, and not only does it have 2 different cuts, but we know it obviously didn't really do very well for them in the first place because they wrote the thing off, and Adult Swim had to rescue it when we finally got it back.
Yeah.
So, it's like, I do understand the hesitance of, and especially these days, shows don't get 50-episode orders in one go anymore. It's just, the anime industry just doesn't do that. I mean, even when they do, with, like, Urusei Yatsura, they sit there and they straight up tell you, like, oh yeah, we're doing a 50-episode series here, but we're splitting it up and it's going to be aired in chunks.
Yeah.
Which means there's going to be a break between, sets of episodes.
I was going to say, like, you don't see long runners anymore. Like, the only long runners that I know right now are One Piece, and, well, it recently ended, but Dragon Quest Dai.
Dragon Quest Dai, Boruto,
Oh,
those are
Boruto.
your only...
Yeah.
But Boruto and Dragon Quest Dai and One Piece are established names and franchises.
Yeah, same with Detective Conan. Like, that show's just, it's, any of the stuff that's just been running and running and running that long, it just sticks with it. It's like, I mean, honestly, thinking about it, the last show that I can probably think of that really had a reasonably long run like that would probably be Dragon Ball Super.
Black Clover.
Oh, Black Clover. Okay, you know what? Yeah,
Black Clover.
Yeah, good call. But I mean, still, out of what, the last 10 years, we can name 2 shows that were 100+ episodes that weren't already existing franchises that just kept running.
Yeah.
Like, it's just not a thing anymore.
Nope.
Not to mention, I mean, like, with the way Dragon Ball is now, like, even if it was to come back, they probably wouldn't make it a long runner because, like, I mean, hell, like, they did another movie and the manga went on a hiatus so they can, like, plan the next, like, arc of it.
Well,
like,
and I think
now
problem,
they're taking their time.
I think the problem too is it's like, it's almost the same problem we see with Toonami, and at times in reverse. A lot of people want to see a 50-episode show on the block because it provides us a consistent cornerstone on the schedule for, say, a year. But at the same time, if that show doesn't end up doing super well, I mean, yeah, granted, we know Adult Swim will pull stuff off the air or shuffle it around if they have to. Like, they're not shy about, getting rid of stuff that ain't working. But, it's, I think even for the Japanese market, it's the same thing. It's like, why lock down a time slot for a really long time when, who knows, you'll have the next Spy Family, or you'll have the next, Jujutsu Kaisen, or anything. I mean, I'm not even saying that to meme here, like, that is legitimately, like, if you can rotate stuff in and out and figure out, okay, we spent 12 or 13 episodes figuring out what works and what doesn't. I can see the appeal to that from, the production standpoint, the network standpoint, I can see where everybody would have pluses to that and the minuses, so it sucks because there's no really one good answer to any of it these days.
Yeah, and I to right on like the long running train, it's just like the reason, like we're seeing it now with like shorter shows, is that shorter shows seem to be taking off a lot more globally than when you had like the most popular of popular shows running back in the day. It's probably more so because like, hey, nowadays options exist, whereas back in like the late 90s, early 2000s, I mean, what options did you have? Like, you had dial-up internet to pirate the latest episodes of shows, but good luck trying to get a good quality, and your download speeds would take days for it to like actually fully download. And then you had Adult Swim and Toonami running anime, but only in English dub format. And nowadays it's a lot more broad. You have more services that offer anime, and anime is now more global than it's ever been before. So obviously more,
for better or for worse.
Yeah, for better or for worse, but more so nowadays, like we don't really need long-running shows to sustain time slots anymore, because the audience has proven like they don't want to watch those anymore. They're more focused on like, hey, I want to watch the latest and greatest that's coming out. Oh, it's 12 to 26 episodes. I'll check it out. It might be a good time. And that isn't to say like, hey, we haven't had any long-running shows, but it's just they're either continuing seasons of already existing properties, or they are reboots of already existing properties, or they are based off of already existing properties. So it all ties back to like the IP idea and how stagnant that's become. But honestly, anime always relies on manga and other IP, as they just kind of are there to advertise that type of stuff to begin with. But the audience has kind of proven that maybe 20 years ago, Spy Family would have been like a 52 episode series made by Studio Bones or whatever, and it would have aired for a concurrent year. It would have waited a whole year, and then we probably would have seen on either Cartoon Network or Adult Swim or whoever wanted to pick up the rights. Whereas nowadays, it's like, well, it's getting made, it's going to be simulcast, it'll be available an hour after it airs on Crunchyroll. And it doesn't have to be super long. If it's short, we can just continue on with it with another season, and that way the audience won't feel like, well, I have to keep up with this constantly, because I would assume like after a while, unless you were a devoted fan, you aren't going to catch up with all those episodes. You're going to watch what you want to watch, and then if it doesn't click with you, you pull out, or maybe like you binge watch it all in one sitting. And that's kind of where the market is right now with those shows.
Well, it's a built-in hype machine, because you get stuff like the first part of Spy Family ran, and then it took a break, and okay, here's a whole bunch of other stuff, and then a month before it comes back, it's like you start building the machine, like, hey, guess what's coming back, guys? Instead of okay, I'm half a year into watching this show, it kind of helps deal with viewer fatigue, in and of itself, just by splitting it up. Obviously, it's a risk because maybe your viewers don't come back, but it's also, if it's a popular enough show, you don't have to worry about it.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I guess this is a good segue into the last topic of the night, which is the new Toonami schedule. Gonna be flat out on, like, this year has proven to not expect anything from Toonami anymore, and I'm not trying to be negative, but like at this point, if I see that a show is ending, I'm just expecting either another episode of Shippuden or like that slot to just be gutted. So like I was just literally expecting nothing. Like my only hopes were My Hero Season 6 and maybe Bleach. But even I was like skeptical, and of course, like whenever a new Toonami schedule is on the horizon, there's always like a lot of speculation, but it's just like with the way this year has proven it, and trust me, next podcast is gonna be like a whole year retrospective of Toonami this year. But this year has really proven to not expect much. So I literally was expecting nothing, and they put out the schedule, and there was some confusion like at first because like three things. One, My Hero season 5. Was it a typo? A lot of us thought in the beginning, or were they actually going to rerun? Because the other thing is if they got season 6, we're like, holy shit, Crunchyroll couldn't take this from them. Yeah, fuck you guys. Only for Jason to then say, yeah, it's a rerun of season 5, and it's just like, ooh. Now, when that happened originally, I was very negative. I was like, okay, this is not good if we are getting a rerun of season 5 while season 6 is currently happening. So I was very not happy and scared. Eventually, we did get the guide though, and it turns out that the third to last episode of the season is listed. And so far on the Swingpedia schedules, for the next 3 weeks, it's the last 3 episodes of Season 5, which, and I'm not trying to expect anything anymore, but if they're playing the last couple episodes of Season 5, then hopefully this means a Season 6 run, because if they were to start all the way at the beginning of Season 5, then I would instantly be like, yeah, okay, no Season 6 then. But if they're playing the last couple episodes of Season 5, okay, maybe Season 6 has a shot, but I'm not too certain. At this point, we have learned this year that Crunchy will literally just take away every anime we ever left from Toonami. The second one was Made in Abyss Season 2. For the people that don't know, there's a movie that plays between Season 1 and 2. And we were all that's the thing. I don't want to say expecting, because this year has shown that we can't expect much. So we were just like, we know that the movie has to happen because it's part of the canon of the show, and they're jumping into season 2. And Jason has said, yeah, we could not get the movie. So watch it online or read a synopsis. Which, isn't the first time, a canon movie has hurt Toonami. Sword Art Online had a movie that's part of the series. And, Alicization played, and apparently that takes place after the movie. Which I didn't even know about until these two characters just jumped in, and we're like, wait, who are they? And they're like, oh yeah, they're from the movie. And it was like, oh. So yeah, Made in Abyss Season 2 with no movie. So you have to watch that on your own or read a synopsis. We put out a lovely PSA saying where you can watch it. And then the third one. With Daylight Savings, they put like a triple deck of Primal. And that was like at 2 and 2:30, but a lot of us were wondering, okay, well, what's 3 and 3:30? Like, Toonami's been running from 12 to 4, and Toonami lost an hour. So the only thing to look forward to now is Main Abyss Season 2. And maybe like a 10% chance of My Hero Season 6. I imagine if they do let My Hero Season 6 play, I'm just imagining Crunchyroll is looking at this and are freaking like gritting their teeth like, you bastards. Why is something we own playing on that filth? Well, at least that's my imagination. But yeah. What do you guys have to say on the new schedule?
It's what I expected would happen. Well, not fully. I expected them to just rerun Housing Complex C until the end of 2023. But
you see, I feel like if they did that though, that really would have just kept killing us, because it's like we would see the same thing over and over again. Since it's only 4 episodes, so it would just keep killing us like Black Lotus did.
Yeah. And honestly, I came correct. Like, they only got one new show to replace Lupin the Third, and that was Made in Abyss. And I'm not really surprised because a lot of this year, probably what deals they had lined up all fell apart, and probably all of them were with Sony. And it probably is taking them a lot of time to be like, okay, well, all of our deals fell apart. We need to restructure our everything. We need to restructure our strategy. We need to move on from Crunchyroll and Sony and Aniplex, unless we have existing contracts with them, which is where I stand. With existing contracts, they have no choice but to let them air their shows. So I am still under the impression that if you're running 3 episodes, we're going to get a Thanksgiving marathon, likely Primal. We'll probably get a Primal marathon at...
I really don't want a Primal marathon. I like whenever it comes to marathons nowadays, it's always one of 3 options: Dragon Ball, Cowboy Bebop, or one of the many originals.
I don't see them running, or I don't see them running Housing Complex C. I think, if anything, maybe they do a Yashahime marathon, maybe. But
I would wish for a One Piece marathon.
I don't think they'll do another One Piece marathon. They tried that. It obviously did not do well enough for them to kind of be like, justify, like, okay, we'll go into our vaults and rerun One Piece. No, we're just going to rerun Dragon Ball all over because people like Dragon Ball, and that does fine enough. So I tend to think for Thanksgiving, they'll have a marathon in December. They will premiere My Hero Academia Season 6, run that for 3 weeks, and then pull it for their last 2 weeks of the year marathons. So that's kind of where I stand on it, is that this month we get Made in Abyss. Next month we get My Hero Academia Season 6. At the start of the block, it runs until all the way, I think, until maybe June, probably.
Yeah, after this weekend, the block will pretty much be set in stone. I think the only thing that'll end after this, the next thing that will end would be Primal. I was gonna say Primal probably would go first because they're running the first 3 episodes of season 2 this weekend.
Yeah.
So yeah, Primal was probably gonna be the first to go, and I think Yashihime's only halfway through the second season, so I think there's still a bit of a way to go with that. But yeah. But I think with Yashahime, if they do this whole marathon shtick, I think it might end at the same time Made in Abyss wraps up, and the final episode is an hour long. So that'll be something where they're like, okay, we're gonna time this out well enough to be like, okay, we're not gonna have Yashahime end too early, but we're not going to have it end later. That way, Made in Abyss can just fill in that time slot for a week, and we can just figure out our deals as we go along. So, I'm excited for Made in Abyss because I've been watching season 2. Like I said, it's really good so far. But oh no! Well, it's wholesome, ain't it? It's very wholesome. Let me get my Capri Sun pouch. One other thing I kind of forgot to mention, big loss here, the double One Piece, because this arc isn't bad, and the last arc that we had wasn't bad either. It's the next arc where the problems of One Piece really start to show, and that's the pacing. We're in Punk Hazard, but the next arc is Dressrosa. That arc is 118 episodes, and there are a lot of good moments in that arc, but Jesus Christ, the pacing is god-awful. And literally, even if we kept the 2 episodes, that arc would still take over a year. And I honestly, in my opinion, the double episode would be a real big help there, but the fact that we're going back to single One Piece episodes now, I'm not looking forward to the next arc weekly again. That
I want to add on to this to talk about the shrink of the block a bit, because I'm actually kind of fine with Toonami shrinking down to 3 hours. If they know for a fact that they won't be getting anything else from Sony for the near
I'm
future.
surprised that they didn't shrink sooner, because I was calling it all.
Maybe
the
they
way
were
in,
holding
like,
out
June.
for some deals that fell through. So maybe they were working with Sony, and then Sony was just like, no, we're still blocking you. Sorry, go elsewhere for your content. So maybe they were holding out for their other partners, such as Viz and Sentai Filmworks, and maybe some of the deals that they had lined up also fell through with those. A deal can fall through for many different reasons besides just money. So it's pretty obvious that for 3 hours, I think that's better for everyone involved. For Jason, for Gil, for everyone who works on Adult Swim's Toonami block, is that 3 hours means that they can be punchy, they can be fast, and hey, they have their 2 long runners to sustain the back end of the clock and a rerun. That, to me, is a good enough lineup to be like, okay, you're 3 hours again, alright, now you have to make it count. You can't just rely on doubling up Shippuden and One Piece forever. And that was never going to be the case. They always have been very open about, like, hey, we're not going to have One Piece an hour forever. It is going to take up a time slot for that time because we have nothing else at the moment. And it's very clear that they never got whatever they wanted to replace that hour-long slot with. So it's clear that right now they are focused on the idea of, hey, One Piece is airing at this time slot for 1 episode a week, and we're fine with that. And for 3 hours, it is a perfect time right now.
Yeah, I just want to be. I don't even know what to. I don't even want to say that I want to be hopeful. I just want something good to, like, happen with Toonami, like, going into the next year, because it's just like, and we'll get more into this when we talk about our whole 2022 retrospective of the block, but it's just like, man, this year really kind of stunk, didn't it? Like this, and, like, to an extent last year was better. It was a little better. Well, yeah, Logan, you probably have stuff to say. Like, we've been talking. Do you have anything to say on this?
I mean, I guess, when it comes to, like, the forward outlook as far as the block goes, the biggest thing I've been kind of thinking about recently is, Jason keeps talking about how they've got stuff in the works, and the reality of it is, anything they're negotiating for is I mean, we've taken Sony off the table, obviously. Mm-hmm. So, I guess the biggest thing I keep thinking of with something like Made in Abyss Season 1, which was definitely not new when the show came to the block, and what I started thinking about was with One Piece, and we know that they went through Toei for that, not through, at the time, Funimation. And I guess, the thing I started thinking about is, knowing what I do about the industry, you don't necessarily go for TV rights when you get a license. Like, we don't go for that at Discotech. Like, it's not something we go for because we don't see any need for it. Especially with most of our titles are much older titles, so nobody's coming knocking on our door to get the stuff that we've got. So the thing I started thinking about is, what if the reason, it took a little while for Made in Abyss to get there, and what if it comes down to the fact that they've got to go to Sentai or to the studios themselves, and they're going, hey, we want this show, you guys have it, do you have the TV rights? And say Sentai goes, no, we don't have them, we need to negotiate for them. Now for Made in Abyss, the first season came out, let's say they had to actually go back to Japan and negotiate for the TV rights and get the extra payment out to them for that. They get that done, and then they go, well, shit, let's get let's go ahead and just grab the rights to Season 2 when we license that outright, because the first season went well on broadcast, so we see a potential there. So it was a lot faster for them to be able to get it. And that's the thing I keep thinking about, is how much stuff is Adult Swim looking at, and the reason we're stuck waiting is because they're still trying to work out the rights because they're having to add something on that, the American side didn't bother with, because again, Sentai looks at it and goes, look, there's one block on TV that runs anime, and they're not really coming knocking for a whole lot of stuff, so why should we spend extra money on TV rights that will probably never get used? And Funimation obviously at the time could look at stuff and go like, hey, Attack on Titan, yeah, we're going to buy the TV rights to that. My Hero Academia, yeah, we're going to buy the TV rights to that. But, again, another one that I was thinking of with the same reasoning is Assassination Classroom. When they originally licensed it, would there have really been a major push to get that on TV? I don't know. So, again, why would they spend the extra money on something that they might not see a future for as far as a broadcast? So I'm kind of hoping that that's what a lot of this holdup is that they've got a bunch of stuff in the pipe and they're just trying to sign contracts. And I can tell you from experience on the industry side of things that Japan is notoriously slow to sign contracts when it comes to old stuff. I mean, even if we're talking a few years old, if they want any kind of oversight over this stuff because they think it has value, they can drag the process out like you would not believe. And that could be a lot of the holdup, is if they're trying to negotiate for these rights, Japan's going to be going, well, wait a minute, why do you guys suddenly want these? How much is this actually worth? And now they're stuck in negotiation hell. And, so that's the biggest thing that kind of gives me some optimism, is Jason continues to talk positively about what they're hoping, that they've got stuff in the works, and, they're just trying to get things done.
He says they have several acquisitions in the works, and we still have yet to see that.
Right, and that's the thing, is obviously he can't tip his hand, because if there's one thing that pisses Japan off, it's opening your mouth before the ink's dry.
Yep.
I will say the other thing that, I'll give credit for the Made in Abyss situation, while it's kind of weird, because for Sword Art Online, I feel like, while yes, the movie was canon, it didn't do enough that by missing it, we were really that hurt by it. Like, It would have been nice to have been able to see it before the the third season kicked off, but not a huge deal. Whereas my understanding with the Made in Abyss movie is that it's absolutely 100% critical. But I think where they have an advantage here is Aniplex stuff, especially when Sword Art, when the movie was out, the only option you had was to go buy the Blu-ray. And at Aniplex pricing, the typical viewer, I mean, the typical anime fan right now doesn't like physical media. For the most part, like your typical mainstream anime fan is a streaming only fan. Like, they don't give a crap about physical media. And, that's fine. Like, it is what it is. But, Aniplex pricing makes that even more prohibitive. A $20 Blu-ray for a movie is one thing, but when you go, oh, it's in a, collector's edition box set and it's $85, I don't give a shit how critical the movie is. I'm not going to go buy that for, $85.
I mean, I recently just pre-ordered the Bleach 4 film collection by Viz, and that was only it was $30, but I got it to $25 because of Amazon.
Yeah. Right. And Aniplex has always been absorbent prices because they list it because of their Japanese side, they always are super expensive on the Japanese end.
Right.
And the American side has never been like that. Well, this is a pricey hobby to be into, right? Like, owning physical anime costs a lot of money, and it's not going to be cheap. But for Aniplex, they are absorbently expensive, and for the quality of shows that they have, I don't think they're worth the amount of money that they are offering. And that's just a personal opinion, obviously. Value your work however you want, I guess. But
right, and I mean, if the market's going to spend the money, then they're going to spend the money. But the thing is, and that's exactly it. It's like, it's a hard sell to go, it's $85 for a 2-hour movie when I can turn around and buy, a 20-hour anime series from, Sentai or from Viz or from Discotech or from a typically priced series set might be $50 and you're getting 26 episodes, 50 episodes even, so it's a hard sell. But I think that's the one aspect here where for Made in Abyss, as much as it sucks how critical this movie is for the plot, Toonami's at least in a better position because it's streaming on Hulu, it's streaming on High Dive, it's available on iTunes for rental for $4. It's a low cost or even a zero cost because honestly, unless you've already burned out using free trials, how hard is it to get a free trial to Hulu for 7 days? How hard is it to get a free 14-day or 1 month trial to High Dive? Like it's not impossible to get that and to get it for free in the couple of days that we have left before the movie airs. No, of course, or the second season airs. And granted, I understand that by the time this podcast comes out, this will have come and gone, and the season will have already started broadcasting. But I do think that that's really where they have an advantage. Is that I wish Toonami had been able to advertise something like gotten High Dive and been like, hey, want to check out the movie? Grab a free 7-day trial to High Dive with code Toonami November 22 or something, some shit like that. Like, I do think there was a missed opportunity there, but I think the viewers are hopefully savvy enough to, especially with groups like ours and Toonami Faithful putting out this PSAs about, hey, be sure to watch the movie. Here's places you can go do it. I think we're at least in a better position for the audience to be able to catch it if they've got the time to catch the movie before season 2 starts airing. So I think that is one benefit, even though it's still a net negative overall. I think it definitely is helpful for Toonami to some extent.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I've seen the movie, so I already know what's up, so I won't be lost. Like anyone watching who hasn't done so yet, do that. I mean, like by the time this gets up, it'll probably have already aired anyway. But yeah, it's just like God, like this is not a pretty good year, like and I'm just hoping that we can go into next year with a more fresh, like better mentality. Like it's just like Logan said it, Jason keeps talking so positive about like it and like what they got in store and how Warner Bros. Discovery like wants them in their future, and I'm like, okay, we still have yet to see like like anything, like to be fair, fuck Crunchyroll. Like it's so like and I'm just kind of ranting at this point, but it's so mind-numbing how like they were literally like fine, like Funimation and all that, they were good, and then like Sony buys Crunchyroll and like instantly it's just like nope, like we're just gonna be like some of the most anti-consumer corporate greed assholes in the world. Like we're gonna lock out Toonami, we're gonna get rid of the ad supported tier of Crunchyroll, we're gonna kick out Kyle McCartley, I think his last name is, from Mob because he wanted it under his union, and we hate unions. Like it's just like, God, y'all have literally just become the absolute worst in a year, and it's just that unfortunately, like, doubt much is gonna change because at this point, like, they've become too big to where, like, even like you could boycott it all they want, but they'll just be like, can't hear you, we're still raking in the cash.
Yeah.
Like,
my thing is, like, with Crunchyroll, like, how much support did Crunchyroll even give Toonami beforehand? Even beforehand, like, what we got Mob Season 1. We couldn't get Season 2 because of some weird fuckery contract with Funimation at the time. The real supporter was always Funimation. Like, like Funimation from the beginning, even going back to Cartoon Network, has always been a big supporter of Toonami. They've always put their shows and licenses on there. They've even gone to them and be like, "Hey, do you want to premiere this for us?" They did that with Attack on Titan. They did that with Dimension W. So it's kind of sad to see like Sony is kind of turning and cogging this entire wheel and basically being like, "We own all this now. We don't need you anymore," and that's kind of disappointing. And for me, it's like, why are you doing? I understand why you're doing this. They want to grow Crunchyroll to be the Netflix of anime, which arguably it is. It is the biggest streaming platform for anime out there. But
monopolies suck.
To me, it's just like it's free advertising. And what you could always do is just like, hey, this is free advertising for the show. We can have it. But they don't want to do that because they believe that, hey, we can get better return on our investment by just keeping it to ourselves. And if that is the case, like, hey, maybe in the future, a lot of these Japanese licensors are just moving away from Crunchyroll and going to do their own
And
thing.
a good example of that, Black Clover movie went to Netflix.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and honestly, that's the only time I'll be okay that Netflix took a show from us, because they took it from an even douchier company. Sad to say that Netflix here is the better one, because at least they're pro-union.
Well, I think it's less that they're pro-union and more like, well, it's
More
either
willing
we do,
to work.
Yeah, it's more like, hey, we want the show, so I guess we'll pay for a union dub, and we'll have over a lot of control over what happens in it. So.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, for me, the Crunchyroll thing, the one thing I keep trying to, look at maybe making lemonade out of lemons is with all the cuts that we saw that WB made when Zaslin took over, maybe as much as I hate to give him credit for it, maybe the fact that Crunchyroll was withholding so much stuff and Toonami literally could not be spending any money on licenses, maybe that was a saving grace for them. Maybe that put them in a position in the books where, the bean counters looked at it and went, well, we don't need to gut this because, it's not really spending that much money right now. Like, it's fine. Like, just let it be. I mean, maybe that's wishful thinking, but, if it kept them out of the crosshairs while all those cuts were being made, hate to give credit to Crunchyroll for it, but, maybe it wasn't such a bad thing.
No.
I mean, obviously, the net result is obviously still worse because we're still worse off for getting shows, but, it may have had a slight beneficial side effect in all the negativity out of it. It's, who knows?
Yeah, I think with Discovery, I think they do value Toonami in a way because it's like, well, even if they are spending loads of cash, anime is still super cheap to license. They're not breaking the bank by just licensing out a show for broadcast. They just aren't.
No, and I mean, and again, we're talking about, even if we're talking like 13 episode shows or 12 episode shows, that's X amount to license it every 12 weeks, and and typically they get at least rights to rerun it once or twice. So yeah, like you said, the overall costs for licensing something versus producing it are still going to be lower. So I definitely agree that it only helped them to some extent if that was the case. But you never know.
Yeah.
It's just like whenever they announce these new shows, it's like you just have to hope and pray that they don't fall into the hands of Crunchyroll, and that's usually the biggest issue. Is because I don't know if you guys watch this one YouTube channel called Glass Reflection, but he described it perfectly to where, like, it doesn't matter how good the service is to them. The only thing that matters to them is how many IPs they can pick up and how many like brands they get. And to them, it's all about the super popular brands, the big Shonen Jump shows like My Hero, Jujutsu Kaisen, Chainsaw Man, and all that. Like, I feel like if we ever get a new anime and it's like a Shonen Jump property, like, it's nine out of 10 chance it's going to Crunchyroll.
Yeah.
Because you'll never it's rare that Viz gets anything now because they're more into the manga business. Like they got Hunter x Hunter and they had JoJo, and they got Naruto and Boruto, and that's really about it.
I think
the biggest thing that scares me right now is I don't want to see the Japanese side go back to doing stuff that they did back in the mid 2000s with stuff like Bandai Entertainment. Granted, they were owned by Bandai Japan, and which of course owns Sunrise and all that.
Mm-hmm.
But they made the Japanese home office made Bandai Entertainment bid on shows, even though they could literally they couldn't give them to them, but you could go, here, you pay us this amount and it's your show. They still made them bid on them, which of course brought Funimation to the table, and Funimation would of course want a show, and they'd try and outbid it. Well, Bandai would just keep outbidding them until Funimation basically backed off, and it inflated the costs on things. And that was part of the reason the bubble burst. And what I really don't want to see is I don't want to see bidding wars come back where we know that Sony is going to be able to outbid anybody. But if these Japanese companies are like, well, we don't want Sony to get it, we want you to get it, so bid on it. But then Sony, of course, is going to bid on it, and they have to entertain a higher bid. And it's just going to keep inflating the costs. And, if that happens, we're in for another bubble burst, because at that point, it's just a matter of time. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
Yeah. And even if that bubble does burst, the industry at this point is just too big to fail. So even if it does burst,
it's either Sony or Netflix that are out there, because Netflix will rake the cast. I'm curious to know the story of why Black Clover shifted to Netflix. Was it just simply Netflix just wanted to outbid them, or was it the owners of Black Clover didn't like Crunchyroll and they were like, okay, we're going to Netflix then, or something like that?
We will never know the answer to that. It could be a multitude of different reasons. It could be political. It could be monetary. It's you'd never know, because we don't see the contracts that they sign and deals that they make. It could be as simple as Crunchyroll wanted it, they were outbid by the competition. And just because Sony owns them, that does not mean that they are big fry now. Sony is still funding money into them, and obviously they're going to get as many of the most popular shows as they can. But they're not an endless stream of money makers, right? They're not Microsoft, they're not Netflix. And even Netflix is struggling to keep up at the moment with all the acquisitions that they're making with both TV and other sectors in their business.
Well, and that's that's one aspect that I'll really be curious to see where Sony goes with it, because ignoring their Aniplex connections, the arm of Sony that now controls Crunchyroll and the remnants of Funimation that have obviously been absorbed into it. The thing about it is that Funimation back in the day, of course, they'd spend, they had the money, they'd spend it, and they'd license a show, and then when the show was no longer performing to their standards, they let the license lapse. And we're early enough on in the Sony ownership that they're still in that honeymoon period of where they can just throw the cash at everything, and they don't necessarily care really how it performs immediately. They want to see how things go for the long run. And as we've seen with Netflix, where Netflix themselves are kind of dialing it back a little bit, because they've realized that just buying everything under the sun isn't sustainable. I have to wonder at what point will Crunchyroll, especially the people from Funimation that know that side of the business, will pop up and be like, look guys, this isn't sustainable. Why are we why are we renewing this license for a show that nobody watches?
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully that's at the point. And yes, granted, it could take 3, 5, 7 years. Those are typical licensing time frames. It's going to be a few years before we start to see this happen. But I'm hoping that by the time it starts to become a thing, the voices of reason inside will be able to actually make their voices heard, and we'll start seeing those licenses dropped. And that's when Sentai and I wouldn't say Viz, because they don't their bread and butter is the manga side. They dip into anime, but they don't do that much.
Mhm.
But Viz or Sentai, us at Discotech, who knows? Another upstart. I mean, G Kids has been doing stuff. They could want to get into picking stuff up. Who knows? But I'm hoping that while, like I said, Sony's in this honeymoon period where they're willing to just keep spending money hand over fist, and hopefully at a certain point they'll back it off and realize that we can't just keep throwing money at a license that 5 people watch every year. Like, where's the value?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it might get to a point where the blockbuster names alone aren't going to be sustainable enough for that subscription. You see that on the game side as well. It's like, hey, Sony did so many of the same type of genre type games last generation, and it became a little stale and oversaturated to a point where it's like, okay, we need to pivot, because if we put all our eggs in one basket, that basket isn't going to last. So it's going to be interesting to see where Sony goes with Crunchyroll and see how the industry changes because of that, or maybe there won't be any significant change. Who knows? It's hard to predict the future for this type of stuff.
I just want next year to be better for Toonami. That's all I'm saying.
I think it will.
Yeah.
So I think we should end it now. I think we did a good chunk. Spent a good chunk of time.
Yeah, 2 hours and 20 minutes for only 3 of us. Not bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, and we didn't have to spend too long on a certain topic that someone could easily, just keep talking about. It's over. But yeah, so like a lot of stuff, and I don't even want to say that I want to be optimistic anymore. I just want something good to happen. That's all I'm saying. But yeah, so that'll conclude this episode of the podcast. Our next podcast will be a year in review of Toonami this entire year. So look forward to that. I want to have everyone involved. I don't think that's going to happen though. But who knows? Anyway, you can follow me on Twitter at Samster299, YouTube channel at Samster299, where I pretty much make the impossible, any Sony anime. I pretty much take an anime from that should be on Toonami and make it look as if it is on Toonami, because we all know Sony ain't doing anything. Pretty much I just do a bunch of fake Toonami stuff, but sometimes I like to get a little creative if I ever have the energy or the drive for it. But yeah, what about you guys?
My name is Sam, and you can follow me on Twitter at SZUniverse. I write for Toonami Squad. Please check out my article that I wrote last month. Was it last month? Times a Flat Circle. About Sony's monopoly on anime, and please check it out. And I might have some other things in the pipeline.
And you can follow me at Schmollus1 on Twitter, presented by Elon Musk.
$8 verification badge, everyone.
Yeah, we'll see if by the next podcast, if we're not all plugging brand new social media, who knows? But yeah, or otherwise, as always, check out your favorite upcoming Discotech title, because my name's probably on it somewhere. So
well, yes, I do see his name on my Discotech copy of the Fatal Fury collection. You can follow us on Twitter at Toonami Squad, YouTube at Toonami Squad, Facebook Toonami Squad. We recently started a TikTok, courtesy of Steven. So follow us on TikTok. You could get expired merch at Redbubble. Am I missing something?
Oh, only expired by design. The actual product quality is still good.
Yes. I think I plugged everything. The Tumblr. We don't have a Tumblr. Do we have a Tumblr? I don't know.
I don't know.
It's like 1 a.m. on my side.
If you forgot anything, you can edit it in later.
Yes.
We'll let Eric do that. That's
Yes, we'll let Eric do that. Anyway, so this has been another episode of Toonami Squad Podcast. Y'all have a good one, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Later.
later.